You see smoke rising from a volcano. Dark plumes billow thousands of feet into the sky. That word smoke. You hear it everywhere in news reports about eruptions. Problem is, volcanoes do not produce smoke. What you're seeing is something far more dangerous. Glass shards, millions of them. Jagged fragments smaller than grains of sand shooting into the atmosphere at speeds that make bullets look slow. This is volcanic ash, and it can kill you in ways smoke never could. Volcanic eruptions are sold to us as spectacle. Glowing lava, explosive power, ancient myths about angry gods demanding sacrifice. But strip away the legend and you find something darker. 7 myths that people repeat as fact. 7 beliefs that have cost lives. 7 misconceptions that scientists battle every single day. The dormant volcano that wasn't. The overdue eruption that can't exist. The lava that rarely kills anyone. The ring of fire that isn't actually on fire. Which ones sit in textbooks, and which ones are Hollywood invention? If you value documented geological and volcanic history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual using sources from the United States Geological Survey, Volcano Hazards Program published continuously through 2025, and from the Journal of Applied Volcanology's Volcanic Fatalities Database. Compiled from 1500 to 2017, showing 278,368 recorded deaths. These are peer-reviewed sources, tracking every documented eruption casualty for 5 centuries. Now back to the information. Most people assume this is how volcanoes kill. The data tells a different story. Between 1500 and 2017, researchers compiled every recorded volcanic death, 635 separate incidents, 278,000 victims. Lava flows accounted for 659 fatalities, less than 1% of the total, not 6,000, not 60,000, 659 people in 5 centuries. The study published in the Journal of Applied Volcanology in 2017 by Sarah Brown at the University of Bristol tracked the distance and distribution of every death. Lava typically moves slow enough for escape. Most basalt flows advance less than 1 kilometer per hour on gentle slopes. Even confined in channels on steep terrain, the main body reaches 30 kilometers per hour. Fast but visible, predictable. You see it coming. The real killers work differently. Pyroclastic density currents. Clouds of superheated gas ash and rock fragments racing down slopes at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Between 1500 and 2017, these flows killed 59,958 people, nearly 60,000 deaths. Mount Pelée on Martinique erupted, May 8, 1902. A pyroclastic flow descended at speeds over 100 miles per hour. The town of Saint-Pierre sat 5 miles from the summit. 28,000 people lived there. The flow reached the town in minutes. Temperature inside the surge hit 250 degrees Celsius. Every person died instantly, 2 survivors. 1 prisoner protected by thick cell walls, the other a shoemaker on the town's outskirts. 28,000 dead in the time it takes to drink coffee. Lahar's mud flows of volcanic debris and water also outpaced lava by magnitude. Between 1500 and 2017, Lahar's killed 49,938 people. Armero, Colombia, November 13th, 1985. Nevado del Ruiz erupted. Not a massive eruption by volcanic standards, but the summit held glaciers, meltwater mixed with ash and debris, creating 4 lahars. The flows raced down river valleys faster than people could run. Armero sat 48 kilometers from the summit. The town held 29,000 residents. The first lahar arrived at 11:30 p.m. By morning, 23,000 people were dead, buried under meters of volcanic mud that hardened like concrete. The town ceased to exist. 56,822 tsunami deaths between 1500 and 2017. Krakatoa, Indonesia, August 27th, 1883. The island volcano exploded with force equivalent to 200 megatons of TNT. The northern 2/3 of the island vanished. Pyroclastic flows traveled across 40 kilometers of open ocean. The explosion triggered tsunamis reaching heights of 40 meters. Coastal Java and Sumatra. Waves struck with no warning. Over 36,000 people drowned in minutes. Lava can destroy property. It burns homes. It buries land under tens of meters of hardened rock. Recovery takes decades. But as a direct killer, it ranks below ash inhalation, below ballistic projectiles, below toxic gas. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens produced 57 confirmed deaths. Not 1 person died from lava. Pyroclastic flows and lateral blasts accounted for the casualties. The 2002 eruption of Nyiragongo in Democratic Republic of Congo remains the deadliest lava flow event in the database. Fluid lava traveled 29 kilometers from the summit. It inundated the city of Goma. 100 to 130 people died, most from explosions when lava contacted fuel storage or from structures collapsing, not from the molten rock itself. But the camera cannot show you pyroclastic density currents. By the time those appear, everyone with a camera is already dead or running. The flows move too fast, they burn too hot, they leave no survivors to film. So we see lava, we remember lava. We forget the invisible killers. European aviation authorities shut down airspace across 20 countries. 100,000 flights canceled over 8 days. 10 million passengers stranded. Airlines lost $1.7 billion. Public outrage followed. Just ash. Just smoke. Why the panic? Because volcanic ash is not smoke, and the difference determines whether an aircraft falls from the sky. Smoke consists of carbon particles suspended in air, soft, light, filtrable. Ash consists of pulverized rock and volcanic glass. The fragments measure less than 2 millimeters in diameter, but their composition is stone. Hardness of 5 on Mohs scale. Sharp, angular, jagged. When magma explodes, the expanding gases shatter molten rock into fragments. These cool, instantly forming glass shards. The United States Geological Survey analysis from 2017 shows ash particles contain between 50 to 72% volcanic glass shards and 28 to 50% mineral crystals, like plagioclase and pyroxene. It breaks along irregular fractures, creating particles with razor edges. Under electron microscopy, the shards resemble broken bottles, fragments of burst bubbles, splinters of rock with surfaces that can slice flesh. Inhaling this material is not like inhaling smoke. The particles lodge in lung tissue, too large to be exhaled, too hard to break down. They cause scarring, silicosis, chronic respiratory disease. 4 inches of ash deposits weigh 120 to 200 pounds per square yard, according to USGS measurements. Roofs collapse under the load, not from soft powder, from accumulated stone. The ash clogs water systems. It shorts electrical equipment. It abrades any moving part it contacts. For aircraft, the danger is catastrophic. Ash enters jet engines. Temperature inside a jet engine exceeds 1,000 degrees Celsius. Volcanic glass melts at temperatures within this range. The ash particles melt. They adhere to turbine nozzle guide vanes. They accumulate. Airflow decreases. Compressor stalls. Complete loss of thrust. British Airways Flight 9, June 24, 1982. Boeing 747 flying over Indonesia. Mount Galunggung erupting. Ash cloud invisible at night. The aircraft entered the plume at 37,000 feet. All 4 engines failed within 90 seconds. The crew initiated emergency descent. At 13,000 feet with Jakarta below them, 2 engines restarted. Then a third. The aircraft landed safely but required extensive repairs. The windscreen had been sand-blasted opaque. Compressor blades showed heavy erosion. Melted ash coated the interior of all 4 engines. 81 separate aircraft encounters with volcanic ash occurred between 1973 and 2009. Several resulted in temporary engine failure. The distinction between ash and smoke is not semantic. It is the difference between soft carbon and sharp stone, between breathable particles and lung-destroying fragments, between cleared airways and grounded fleets. The myth survives because ash looks like smoke in photographs, dark clouds rising, spreading, drifting. The composition hides in plain sight. Volcanoes that haven't erupted in centuries are extinct. Romans settled the Bay of Naples region centuries before Common Era. Rich volcanic soil, mild climate, access to trade routes. 20,000 people lived in Pompeii by 79 AD. 5,000 in Herculaneum. Wealthy citizens built vacation villas on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. The mountain stood quiet, forested, scenic. Nobody called it a volcano because Romans had no word for volcano. The term derives from Vulcan the god, but the linguistic connection had not formed. Citizens knew the mountain sometimes produced earthquakes. Pliny the Younger recorded that minor tremors were frequent in Campania and not particularly alarming. February 5th, 62 AD, a major earthquake struck. Widespread destruction around the Bay of Naples, particularly severe in Pompeii. 17 years later, repairs were still incomplete. August 24th, 79 AD, though recent archaeological evidence suggests October or November, Mount Vesuvius erupted. Century S of dormancy ended in 18 hours, 1 p.m. The mountain exploded. Ash and pumice shot 33 kilometers into the atmosphere. The column rose in the shape Pliny described as resembling a pine tree. By nightfall, Pompeii lay under 14 to 17 feet of ash and pumice. Herculaneum buried under 60 feet of pyroclastic flow deposits. The mountain that provided fertile soil for 800 years revealed its nature in less than a day. Vesuvius had not been extinct, it had been dormant. The distinction is technical but critical. An extinct volcano has no magma supply remaining. The geological plumbing is cold, dead. Dormant means temporarily quiet. The magma chamber persists, pressure builds, gases accumulate. Eventually, release becomes inevitable. Determining which category applies requires geological investigation. Surface appearance provides no reliable indicator. Vesuvius erupted multiple times after 79 AD. The most recent eruption occurred March 1944. Lava flows destroyed the villages of San Sebastiano and Massa. 79 years of dormancy as of 2025. Not extinct, sleeping. The misconception stems from human timescales. A volcano quiet for 800 years seems permanent to people who live 70. But geology operates on different rhythms. Yellowstone's 3 supereruptions occurred 2.08 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, and 631,000 years ago. Intervals of 780,000 years and 669,000 years. Not evenly spaced, not predictable. The caldera is not extinct because 631,000 years passed. The magma chamber persists, though only 5 to 15% molten, according to University of Utah seismic studies from 2013. Indigenous peoples transmitted oral histories of earlier eruptions, but 19th century settlers dismissed these as legends. The mountain appeared permanent, snow-capped, forested, a recreational destination, March 20th, 1980. Small earthquakes began, March 27th. Phreatic eruption blasted a crater through the summit ice. By May, the north face showed a visible bulge from magma intrusion. May 18th, 9:32 a.m., magnitude 5.1 earthquake. The north face collapsed in the largest landslide in recorded history. The lateral blast that followed traveled at speeds exceeding 480 kilometers per hour. The blast zone extended 27 kilometers north. Every tree within the zone was leveled or incinerated. 57 people died, most beyond the expected hazard zones. A dormant period of over a century provided no protection. The misconception has killed thousands. Villages built on fertile volcanic slopes, farms established in calderas, cities growing around quiet mountains, each assumes the silence is permanent. Yellowstone is overdue. Mount Fuji is overdue. The supervolcano threatens civilization because enough time has passed. Headlines declare crisis. Documentaries calculate the years remaining. The premise is mathematically invalid. Volcanoes do not operate on schedules. Michael Pollan, geophysicist and scientist in charge at Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, addressed this directly in correspondence published by Live Science in January 2023. Volcanoes do not work on timelines. They erupt when there is enough eruptible magma beneath the surface and pressure to cause that magma to ascend. Neither condition exists at Yellowstone right now. The overdue myth comes from treating volcanic intervals like earthquake recurrence. Earthquakes happen when stress accumulates on faults at relatively constant rates due to plate motion. This creates rough patterns. Volcanoes lack this mechanism. Magma supply is not constant. Chamber filling rates vary. Eruption triggers are complex. Using 2 data points to establish a schedule is statistically meaningless. 2.08 million years ago to 1.3 million years ago is 780,000 years. 1.3 million years ago to 631,000 years ago is 669,000 years. Average these and you get 725,000 years. Subtract 631,000 from 725,000, and headlines declare Yellowstone 94,000 years overdue. Except volcanic systems do not have multiple supereruptions evenly spaced. Most systems produce one supereruption and never repeat. When multiple eruptions occur, the intervals are irregular. Jake Lowenstern, USGS scientist in charge at Yellowstone, stated in published interviews that calculating recurrence periods from only 2 intervals is scientifically invalid. The magma reservoir beneath Yellowstone is 5 to 15% molten according to 2013 seismic tomography studies by University of Utah scientists. That is too frozen to erupt. A supereruption requires mobilization of over 1,000 cubic kilometers of magma. Current melt fraction is insufficient. If Yellowstone erupts, the most likely scenario is a lava flow, not a supereruption. Of the last 50 eruptions at Yellowstone, almost all were simple lava flows. The most recent occurred 70,000 years ago. Not catastrophic, not civilization ending. 318 years of dormancy as of 2025. Japanese media occasionally quotes volcanologists warning it has been too long. The volcano must erupt soon. But Mount Fuji's historical pattern shows no regularity. Major eruptions occurred 834, 937, 1033, 15, 11, 17, 07. intervals of 103 years, 96 years, 478 years, 196 years. No pattern, no schedule. The concern about Fuji is valid, but not because time elapsed. The concern is that Tokyo metropolitan area now holds 14 million people within potential ashfall zones. Population growth increases vulnerability, not elapsed time. The overdue concept imposes human expectations onto geological processes. We create schedules, appointments, deadlines. We structure time into predictable intervals. Volcanoes do not. They respond to physical conditions: magma supply, chamber pressure, crustal stress, rock strength, water content. These factors change on timescales indifferent to human calendars. A volcano quiet for 1,000 years might never erupt again. One quiet for a century might explode tomorrow. Duration of dormancy provides no predictive power. Volcanoes erupt all over the world and nobody knows why. Biblical prophecy cites: there seemed to have been an increase in earthquakes around 1900 as well as 1940 and lately. The implication is always the same. Volcanic activity is surging. The ring of fire is awakening. The end approaches. The data contradicts this narrative completely. At any given moment, 8 to 12 volcanoes are erupting worldwide according to Smithsonian Global Volcanism Program. Continuous monitoring. This number has remained stable for decades. Seismic networks record no statistically significant increase in eruption frequency over the past century. What changed is monitoring and communication. 100 years ago, an eruption in remote Alaska or Indonesia might go completely undocumented. No satellites tracked ash clouds. No seismographs detected precursor earthquakes. No global news networks broadcast footage within hours. Today, remote volcanoes in Kamchatka, Vanuatu, the Aleutian Islands, are monitored by satellite and ground sensors. When they erupt, the world knows immediately. Social media amplifies every event. Twitter users post videos. News websites publish dramatic photographs. Each eruption feels unprecedented because we see it happen in real time. Analysis shows no increase in eruption frequency when accounting for improved detection methods. The perception of increase is observation bias, not geological reality. News reports claim ring of fire activity reached alarming levels in 2024. Climate Cosmos published an article in May 2025 stating 47 volcanoes were in active eruption status as of May 2nd, 2025, marking one of the highest counts in recorded history. They cite 74 confirmed eruptions at some point during 2024 from 65 different volcanoes. But the United States Geological Survey clarifies there is no definitive evidence that an eruption at one volcano can trigger an eruption at a volcano hundreds of kilometers away or on a different continent. Volcanoes separated by large distances cannot influence each other mechanically. The Ring of Fire contains between 450 to 915 volcanoes, depending on classification criteria. About 500 have erupted in historical time. Having 47 active simultaneously represents roughly 9% of historically active volcanoes. This is within normal statistical range. The Ring of Fire has been volcanically active for over 35 million years. Subduction zones create volcanoes. Oceanic plates descend beneath continental plates. Water and volatiles from the subducting slab lower the melting point of mantle rock. Magma rises. Eruptions occur. This process is continuous, not episodic. Indonesia alone has 120 active volcanoes. Multiple eruptions per year is expected not alarming. The clustering of notable eruptions in 2024 reflects random statistical variation, not a fundamental change in volcanic behavior. Humans notice patterns even in random data. We see 5 eruptions in quick succession and construct narratives of causation. The Earth is not becoming more geologically active. We are becoming more geologically aware. Every eruption is now filmed, documented, analyzed, shared globally within hours. Volcanic activity that once passed unnoticed now dominates news cycles. The perception of increase is a byproduct of information technology, not magmatic processes. Number 6. Virgin sacrifice stops volcanic eruptions. 1832 film Bird of Paradise. Native girl thrown into volcano to appease goddess Pele. 1933 King Kong. Human offerings to giant ape god. 1969 documentary showing Mount Bromo rituals in Indonesia. The trope is everywhere in popular culture. Villages throw virgins into volcanoes. Gods demand blood sacrifice. Eruptions stop when proper offerings are made. Hollywood created the stereotype, but beneath the fiction sits documented historical practice that is somehow darker than the myth. Human sacrifice to volcanoes occurred throughout history. Not as Hollywood depicts, with victims thrown into lava lakes. Those do not exist in nature. Volcanic cones do not contain lakes of accessible molten rock waiting for human bodies. Lava typically erupts upward or outward, then flows laterally. The actual practice involved ritual killing on volcanic summits during ceremonies meant to appease mountain deities. Inca civilization conducted capacocha ceremonies on sacred peaks, including active volcanoes. 1998 archaeological expedition to Misty Volcano Summit in Peru. Elevation 5,822 meters. Inside the crater, archaeologists excavated Inca ceremonial sites. They recovered 6 human sacrificial victims. Over 40 statuettes made from gold, silver, and spondylus shell. The bodies showed signs of ritual preparation, well-dressed, well-nourished. Some showed evidence of coca leaf and alcohol consumption before death, likely to sedate them. The chronicler Martin de Murua wrote in 1590, describing events during Inca Emperor Pachacutec's reign around 1440. Misty Volcano erupted catastrophically. The devastation terrified the population. Pachacutec's wife, Mama Ana Huarquicoya, ordered sacrifices performed in temples throughout Cusco to appease the mountain deity. The eruption continued. Pachacutec himself traveled to Misty with priests and shamans to perform sacrifices directly at the volcano. The eruption eventually subsided. Whether the timing was coincidence or the volcano simply exhausted its eruptive phase is unknowable. The Inca interpreted the sequence as cause and effect. Mount Lulailaco in Argentina. Elevation 6,739 meters. 1999 expedition discovered 3 frozen mummified children at the summit. The Lightning Girl age 6, the Maiden age 15, the boy age 7. All 3 showed evidence of capacocha ritual, fine clothing, elaborate headdresses. Chemical analysis of hair samples showed increased coca and alcohol consumption in the months before death. The children were likely selected for beauty and health, raised in comfort, given ritual substances. Then brought to the frozen summit where altitude and cold killed them. The location was not accidental. These mountains were considered huacas, sacred places where the physical world met the spiritual. Volcanic peaks held particular power because they demonstrated the Earth's internal forces. Historical accounts by early missionaries describe ceremonies to honor Pele during active eruptions. Offerings typically consisted of food flowers, pigs. Some accounts mention human sacrifice, though documentation is less clear than with Inca practices. Kamehameha attempted to stop the 1801 Hualalai eruption with offerings of breadfruit fish and a pig. The eruption continued. Only when he threw a lock of his hair, symbolically offering part of himself, did the eruption stop, according to oral tradition. Whether correlation or coincidence is disputed. The myth and the reality diverge. Hollywood shows dramatic victims thrown into lava pools. Archaeological evidence shows ritual killings on summits with bodies buried in stone structures. The motivation was identical. Communities facing volcanic destruction believed supernatural forces controlled eruptions. Appeasing those forces through ultimate sacrifice seemed rational. The practice failed because volcanic eruptions follow physical laws, not spiritual ones. Magma, chamber pressure, gas content, crustal stress, tectonic movement. Human sacrifice cannot influence these variables. Every year, during Yadnya Casada Festival, Tengur people climb to the crater rim. They throw offerings into the volcano, food, livestock, money. Some villagers position themselves below the rim with nets to catch the offerings. The practice honors the legend of Princess Roro Anteng and her husband Joko Sager, who promised their 25th child to the mountain in exchange for fertility. No human sacrifice occurs in modern practice, but the ritual continuity spans centuries. It persists, not because it prevents eruptions, but because it maintains cultural identity and provides psychological comfort. People living beside active volcanoes need ways to process existential fear. Ritual provides structure, community, meaning, even if it cannot change magmatic processes. Volcanologists classify volcanoes by activity status, but the classifications are probabilistic, not certain. Active volcanoes have erupted within recorded history, typically the last 10,000 years. Dormant volcanoes show no current eruption, but retain a magma supply and could erupt again. Extinct volcanoes have no remaining magma supply and are unlikely to ever erupt again. The problem is determining which category applies. Surface features provide limited information. A volcano can appear extinct while magma slowly accumulates at depth. Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines was classified by many as dormant, possibly extinct, before 1991. No historical eruptions. Geothermal activity around the flanks suggested some heat remained, but no imminent threat. April 1991. Steam explosions began. Earthquakes increased. By June, the volcano produced the second largest eruption of the 20th century. Volcanic explosivities index 6, 10 cubic kilometers of material ejected. Ash cloud reached 34 kilometers altitude. 847 people died, mostly from roof collapses under ash weight. 20,000 more died in subsequent years from lahars and disease. The volcano transitioned from possibly extinct to catastrophically active in 2 months. Four-peaked volcano in Alaska, considered extinct, no eruptions in recorded history. September 17th, 2006. Steam and ash plume rose 5,000 meters above the summit. Seismic monitoring detected earthquake swarms. The USGS Alaska Volcano Observatory had not been monitoring four-peaked because it was classified as extinct. The eruption was small, but it demonstrated that extinct classification is uncertain. Magma can intrude into volcanic systems previously thought dead. Ioto Island, formerly known as Iwo Jima in Japan. Last major eruption occurred around 1670. Minor phreatic explosions in the 20th century, but no magmatic eruptions. 2019. Ground deformation measurements showed the island rising at rates exceeding 1 meter per year in some areas. This is extraordinary. Magma intrusion at shallow depth. The volcano, considered dormant for 350 years, showed renewed activity. Whether this leads to a major eruption is unknown, but the classification of dormant no longer provides reassurance. The timeline for a volcanic reawakening can be decades or days. Long Valley caldera in California. Super eruption 767,000 years ago. Minor eruptions continued until 50,000 years ago. Then silence. 1978. Magnitude 5.7 earthquake swarm beneath the caldera. Ground uplift began. Between 1979 and 1984, the resurgent dome rose 60 centimeters. Carbon dioxide gas emissions killed trees across 100 acres on Mammoth Mountain. The USGS now maintains continuous monitoring. The caldera is not extinct despite 50,000 years of dormancy. The myth of safety comes from wanting certainty. People build homes, buy property, raise families. They need to believe the mountain is stable. Extinct sounds permanent. But volcanic systems operate on geological timescales where 50,000 years is a brief pause. Communities living near volcanoes, classified as dormant or extinct, face impossible risk calculations. Move and abandon valuable land, fertile soil, established communities. Stay and accept low probability, high consequence danger. The classification system provides guidance but not guarantees. The language itself misleads. Dormant suggests temporary sleep with predictable awakening. Extinct suggests finality. Neither applies cleanly to volcanoes. Some remain dormant for millennia, then never erupt again. Others classified as extinct produce devastating eruptions centuries after the classification. The only honest statement is uncertainty. We can measure current activity, we can study past eruptions, we can model magma chamber dynamics. We cannot predict with certainty whether any given volcano will erupt or when. The mountain appeared permanent, until it wasn't. That's the pattern throughout history. Communities assume stability, generations pass without incident. Then the mountain reveals what it always was. You hear the myths repeated as fact. Lava is the killer. Ash is just smoke. Extinct means safe. Sacrifice appeases the gods. The Ring of Fire is awakening. Yellowstone is overdue. But strip away the comfortable narratives and you find something more unsettling. 278,000 people dead in 5 centuries. Not from lava, from pyroclastic clouds that move faster than you can run. From mudflows that bury towns in minutes. From glass shards that shred your lungs. The volcano does not care about schedules or sacrifice. It responds to pressure and physics. Magma rises when density and buoyancy exceed the strength of overlying rock. Eruptions stop when pressure equalizes or magma supply exhausts. No human action changes this. We monitor, we evacuate, we rebuild farther away, but we cannot appease or predict or prevent. The idea that volcanoes operate on schedules suggests they can be predicted. The idea that sacrifice works suggests humans have agency over natural forces. The idea that lava is the main threat makes the danger visible and simple. Strip these away and you face a truth that cultures throughout history have struggled to accept. You live on a dynamic planet where solid ground is temporary. The mountains grow and collapse. The continents drift and collide. The forces that built the landscape can unmake it without warning. The magma beneath Yellowstone is mostly frozen, but not entirely. The Ring of Fire volcanoes will keep erupting because the plates keep subducting. Vesuvius will erupt again because the magma chamber persists. Pinatubo demonstrated dormant can become active in weeks. Four-peaked showed extinct is never certain. You cannot throw a virgin into a crater to stop what pressure and heat will inevitably release. Harry Truman, 83 years old, refused to leave Spirit Lake Lodge 5 miles from the summit. He had lived there 54 years. The mountain would not hurt him. May 18th, landslide. Lateral blast, pyroclastic flows. The lodge and everything within 1 kilometer was obliterated. Harry Truman's body was never recovered, buried under 150 meters of debris. He believed the mountain was his friend. The mountain was geology. 2014 Mount Ontake, Japan. 57 hikers on the summit, minor Friedrich eruption, ballistic rocks ejected at velocities over 100 meters per second. No warning. Hikers hit by rocks the size of cars, 57 dead. 2,600 meters from the vent. The mountain had been quiet. The hikers had no reason to fear. The eruption lasted minutes. The mountain did not target them. Pressure released, water flashed to steam. Rock shattered and flew outward. Physics, not malice. 340 million cubic meters of rock slid into the ocean. Tsunami generated. Waves reached 3 meters height. 437 people killed on the coasts of Java and Sumatra. No earthquake warning, no evacuation. The volcano was simply doing what volcanic islands do, growing and collapsing in cycles. The people living on the coast had no myth to protect them, no schedule to predict when it would happen, no sacrifice to prevent it. The waves arrived at night. Many died in their sleep. The investigation afterward found evidence of previous collapses. The volcano had done this before. It will do it again. The only question is when, and the only honest answer is we do not know. That's the conclusion that terrifies and why the myths persist. Uncertainty is intolerable, so we create stories, patterns, schedules, ways to believe we understand and control what we cannot. But the volcanic glass in your lungs does not care about your story. The pyroclastic cloud does not slow for your sacrifice. The mountain that stood quiet for 800 years does not guarantee another day. The magma rises when physics permits. The eruption occurs when pressure exceeds confinement. Everything else is mythology. Each one small enough to travel thousands of kilometers, sharp enough to destroy machinery, hard enough to collapse your roof, and you cannot sacrifice a virgin to make them fall somewhere else. The volcano does not negotiate. It erupts, or it does not, and no amount of believing extinct means forever will change what the magma chamber holds. 79 AD. The Romans looked at Vesuvius and saw a beautiful mountain covered in vineyards. They built cities at its base because the soil was rich. They had no word for volcano. They learned one when the ash fell thick enough to bury buildings, when the pyroclastic surge came fast enough that people died with bread still in their ovens. The mountain they thought was safe revealed centuries of accumulated pressure in 18 hours. The ash preserved their bodies. 2,000 years later, we excavate the casts and study the final moments, running, covering their faces. Dying in streets and homes and boats trying to escape, they believed the mountain was permanent. They were wrong. You know better now, or you think you do. But you still repeat the myths. Yellowstone is overdue. Lava is the killer. Extinct means forever. The myths are comfortable. The truth is not. 278,000 people learned the truth in their final seconds. The mountain does not care what you believe. It erupts when it erupts. And all your myths cannot stop it.